Yo, what's going on? Welcome back to the Execute Regardless podcast. Listen, before we jump into what is going to be a sick fucking episode, I owe you a special thanks. I owe the people who have reached out over the last couple of weeks, the last few days, a thank you from a deep place in my heart, because I want you to know that the time you take to email, the time you take to reach out, that is validation that we are on the right path with the purpose of this podcast, to prove that there's no secret, that the only difference between winning and losing is the ability to execute regardless, and the impact this methodology, this way of living can have, not only on my life and your life, but other people's lives. And it's infectious. And your messages, your energy toward me is infectious. And I just want to say thank you for that. Now, my coffee has probably gone a little bit cold. Do the honors. Have a coffee with me on this podcast. This is going to be very, very fucking good. Right? I said very twice for emphasis. But go get a coffee. Let's roll into this. It's going to be sick, right? So I've got mine here. It's probably cold, but it is what it is. Yeah, it's cold, but it's still nice. This one's nice. These Nespresso ones, I basically play Nespresso roulette with myself. It's a way of like pulling more excitement from the day. I know that's how sad my life is. I'm rambling. Right, to keep going. What is this episode about? Well, this episode is specific for one person. This one in particular. It's conditional. If you are in a place right now, if you're feeling like you're putting so much into something, if you feel like you're investing your time, energy, resources, your effort, but you're not seeing results and you're wondering whether or not that it's worth it, this episode is for you. Okay? If you've been wondering, should I keep going? Should I just jack it in? You're not sure which route to choose. Let me tell you something. It's completely normal to feel what you're feeling right now. In fact, if you felt anything other than what you're feeling, I'd actually be a little bit worried. To put so much into something and not see results, and to keep doing that for a long period of time, we could actually question, is that insanity? So you are saying, first of all, it's quite normal to feel that. The interesting thing about this is where most people give up. This is where I gave up for years. This is where most people give up. But what I want to say to you is, just because you're putting so much into something for a period of time and you're not seeing results does not mean that you're doing the wrong thing. It does not mean that you're losing. In fact, this dilemma is created by something that's called the lag period. Okay, so this dilemma where you think you're not progressing, but you really are, it's created by something called a lag period. And the lag period is a gap between the input and the output, between your actions and results. And this is what most people can't survive. And what I want to tell you is, if you can understand the lag period, and if you want to avoid having to throw all your hard work, all that time, all your energy, all your resources, all your investments into this, if you want to avoid having to sacrifice that, and you want a way to validate that you are on the right path, and I mean clearly validate, so you don't have to second guess, you don't have to wonder, is this ever going to happen? When will it happen? If you want a way of knowing that you're going to get the big payoff, you need to understand the lag period. And let me tell you something about it. By the way, I hope you have your coffee by now. Let me tell you something about the lag period. Every winner, anyone who has ever done something great, anyone who has ever won big, anyone who has ever went on to do something anyone who's ever gone on to do something monumental, they have went through this lag period. And the interesting thing is, it's rooted in physics, which we'll get to in a moment. This is just simple physics. But there is not one person who's ever done something great that has not went through this period where you are right now, that has not had to endure the lag period, okay? When I first wrapped my head around this after years of pain, giving up, actually sacrificing so much only to end up throwing it all in the bin, when I eventually wrapped my head around the lag period, not only did I have validation that I was on the right path, but rather than feeling drained, I went into every day with momentum, knowing that the outcome was going to happen soon. And it really is just physics. And eventually, if you know me by now, you know that the big accomplishments that I chased in my life, the big missions that I went on in my life were business, marketing, consulting, and health. And for me, when I wrapped my head around this, it put my mind at ease. And eventually I was able to see that through to the point where I was able to build a 6-figure marketing consultancy, to the point where I was able to build a second business, which I'm currently working on right now. And this concept, by the way, this concept actually helps me manage my goals this time around too. And I applied it at a time as well when I had no money, when I was overweight. With regard to health, I applied this at the time when I couldn't see anything. And it helped me get to where I wanted to go. And I can do the same for you. And what I want to tell you is, if you are feeling this right now, you're feeling like, I don't know if I should keep going. Maybe I should jump on something else. Maybe this isn't for me. That's an indicator that you're actually on the right fucking path. And I'm going to prove that to you, right? Shit, I forgot my water. We'll have to make this coffee last for the whole episode. Okay, so when did I first realize this? I got to give you context. So for years, if you've listened enough times now, I spent so much time losing that I got really good at knowing what not to do. You should listen to me because I failed so fucking much. Okay, and the easiest way to win is knowing how not to lose. And I spent so much time losing. Sorry, I want to make sure that I don't ramble here. I spent years grinding every fucking day, right? Investing all the money that I had, working fucking 2 jobs, doing pizza deliveries, all this type of shit. Doing what I was told to do, by the way. You know, this whole thing, they say, the grind, trust the process, put in the hours. I done all of that for years and never saw results, right? Done all of that for years and never saw results. But what I did see was other people around me getting ahead. So I'm doing all this. I'm showing up every day. I'm fucking grafting. I'm not getting ahead, but everybody else is getting ahead. And it got to the point where I started sitting there and I was questioning myself. I started saying, on many occasions, should I keep going? Am I in the right vehicle? Am I doing the right thing? Is there something wrong with me? Does the world have something against me? Is there an invisible force holding me back? All these questions that I had. And what I wanted to know was, I just wanted to know if I was on the right fucking track. If I should keep going, because it's very hard to keep going. As I said, when you're doing so much, you're not making any progress, you actually start to go a little bit insane. I know I was going a little bit insane. In fact, I was developing it's a horrible feeling, but a sense of envy toward others who were getting ahead. And that's not in my nature at all, but it's very hard not to feel all these things. And it became draining. It became draining that I could not validate. And the vehicles, as I said, that I was trying was, I was trusting the process. I was putting in the hours. I was fucking doing the stuff that they say, grinding. I was doing all of this stuff. And I just wanted to know if this was all going to be worth it. And I came to this conclusion on multiple occasions. Like, if we were to go through my experiences, I had so many failures. So the first business I had, for example, was an Amazon FBA business. On Instagram, you can still see it. It's at Wild Paws, pause with a Z, PS. So at Wild Paws, PS. PS was for pet store. That failed. Second business, traditional offline media business, putting digital screens in local towns, selling advertising space. Didn't work. After that, then went on to do another digital marketing business. Then I went on to be a trader. Then I made a lot of money there. I lost all that. Then I tried to start a social media marketing agency. That didn't work. And throughout all this time, this is when the questions were popping into my head. Should I just jump ship and do something else? And I clearly was doing that. I clearly did jump ship one too many times. I learned a lot of lessons along the way. But maybe if I had learned this one thing earlier, I would have saved myself more time. And it got to the point, the thing in my mind was, it was like, number one, it was a little bit of shiny object syndrome, but it was also like, should I just take my loss on the chin and not endure any more pain going forward? That was what it came down to. And many times I gave into that. And eventually something clicked. Eventually the course changed, and eventually I was able to make it work. And I realized something that essentially changed the trajectory of my life. And what I realized was that winning really does take time. And there's this thing in physics. It's called inertia. Let me explain it. Inertia is the friction against motion that eventually becomes momentum. Okay, so inertia is the friction against motion that eventually becomes momentum. Okay, this is Newton's laws of motion. Now, the lag period is the time where that is happening. So I want to make sure I phrase this correctly. So that period where the friction is pressing against the thing that's trying to move. So the period between the friction and momentum. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, actually. So the lag period can be defined as the period between friction and momentum. Okay, and this is what most people can't endure. This is the hardest part of the come up. But let's break it down. The way I want you to think of it like a rocket taking off on a launch pad. A rocket uses the majority of its fuel during the launch to break through the atmosphere. But the interesting thing about a rocket is, once it breaks through the atmosphere, it essentially cruises effortless. It has momentum. It doesn't have to try anymore. But let's break it down. When the rocket is taking off, okay, that is essentially experiencing inertia. It is experiencing friction against the motion, okay? And that fuel that it's burning, that is essentially what you're doing right now. The rocket taking off and burning all that fuel to break through the friction and eventually gain momentum. Picture that. That's the way your come up is right now. Right now, that grind, that effort, that input that you're putting in, it feels so hard because you're essentially breaking through the atmosphere, right? That's essentially what's going on. The part of your come up right now is the equivalent of the rocket taking off. The fuel is you, right? Your effort. You are fucking launching. And you are somewhere between that midpoint where you're launched and the atmosphere. And what you need to understand is this is necessary. This is just physics, okay? This is just physics. Now, you could be at the very beginning or you could just be about to break through. This is important. I hope this isn't too complicated. Does that make sense, by the way? Sorry, I just want to make sure that we're staying on track. But essentially, what happens... Sorry, one sec. This coffee's freezing. So essentially, think of your come up the same way. Think of your come up like a rocket ship. Inertia, the lag period, is like the rocket breaking through the atmosphere. Once you fucking break through, I'm telling you, it starts to coast. It starts to coast. It has its own momentum. It does not require much of a fucking push. It does not require so much effort once it breaks through. Now, Once I realized this about the lag period, here's the beautiful thing about it. The beautiful thing about understanding that, and I'm probably terrible at explaining this, because these concepts, they're easy to understand in my brain, but to fucking say them, it's a little bit more confusing. But you get the message. Now, once I understood this concept of the lag period, once I understood Newton's laws of motion and inertia, and that there's a period where the motion will have to undergo friction before it gains momentum. Once I understood that, I was able to try and map out a timeline, which is what I recommend you doing. So what I mean is, the first thing is you got to accept that the lag period is physically mandatory. You have to go through this. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is, once you expect it, what it does is it takes a lot of weight off your shoulder, if that makes sense. You can drop the weight, you can drop the uncertainty, you can drop this whole fucking internal question that makes you second guess, because you're like, no, this is actually just physics. This is the way it's meant to go. I will experience friction, but eventually this will turn into momentum. Eventually I will break through and I will get what I want. I will go to where I want to go. I will go to new heights. That is essentially what happens when you digest it and accept it. So when you're building a game plan, which is where you are right now, where you want to go, why you're going there, one thing that I factored in then was, how long is it going to take to get there? What is the lag period? What is the amount of time that I'm going to have to endure this friction, this hardship? And then once I break through, I will get this outcome that I want, right? And by just understanding that, it was like the weight of the world was took off my shoulder. It gave me some sort of an idea of what to expect. And you need to do the same when you're mapping out your plan, the same way I did. So if you know that roughly, okay, let's say for example, let's take an example. If you want to lose weight, just a real basic example. If you want to lose weight and you start eating like an athlete today, you start eating like an elite performer. Well, tomorrow, if you're overweight right now, tomorrow you are not going to have a six-pack. But just because you don't have a six-pack tomorrow, does that mean you're doing the wrong thing? No, it does not. You're doing the fucking right thing. In fact, this is just a lag period playing out. And the interesting thing is, all winners, like every fucking winner on this planet, has had to go through the lag period, has had to experience the friction before it turns into momentum. Okay? It's super important that you understand this, by the way. And most people, they cannot endure that process. And when I done this, everything started to subside, as I said. And eventually what happened was, I started to see results. Now, at first, it was subtle. Think of it literally like breaking through the atmosphere. I started to see results very subtly. But eventually, once I fucking broke through, if we were to look at the different areas in my life in terms of business, okay, we started to pick up, we started to gain momentum. And then eventually that compounds, that momentum really starts to build up to the point where you're cruising. There's a great quote in Think and Grow Rich, actually, just as I'm saying this, by Napoleon Hill. And he said, I'm pretty sure, let me think back on this for a sec. He said, when riches come, they come in such abundance that one might wonder where they were hiding all along. And that always stuck with me. That was always a great way to explain the lag period, to explain the period of time between, when we start this journey, experiencing the friction, turning it into momentum, and then how it all comes about. And at the time of reading it, I never really understood, but now it all makes sense just as I'm talking out loud here, and it brings it back. But eventually, back to the point, eventually everything started to fucking click. Eventually I started to lose weight, but within a matter of 6 weeks, I went from like 12% body fat to boom, that clicked. Eventually I went from 6 years of making no money to making my first 100 grand predictably online. Then I went on to build a second business. It all became, I know it sounds cliche, but it all became effortless. And I know that there's so many people that they're going through this right now and they're wondering, fuck, should I just bail? Like, am I doing the wrong thing? Shiny object syndrome gets in the way. It's very enticing. I've been there. I've done it 100 times, and you don't have to fucking do it. Take this as validation that you are on the right path, right? Just give me 1 sec. So does that make sense? Do you understand what I mean by the lag period? Okay. The beautiful thing about this is not only can you use this and leverage this to not only outmaneuver people, because everyone is very short-term focused. Everyone is focused on today, tomorrow, next week, next month. Nobody is thinking in terms of 4 or 5 years from now. Let me give you an example. Right now, my timeline with Winners Win, and again, I always say I will never sell this company. Like, this is the hill that I'm dying on. But I know that in 5 years' time, this company will be valued at over 100 million. I know that. Now, the interesting thing is when you map out something that could take 5 years, what you need to understand is you can go, like the lag periods can run out a long period of time. You can go 4 years, 11 months, fucking 29 days without seeing results once you're aware of the lag period, because you know that it's just physics. By year 5, that outcome will happen. It's simple input, output. And when you get real about how long it's actually going to take, right? That's how you get that validation, that certainty. And rather than being drained on your mission, you're actually building momentum every day. You're going into the day being intentional. Even if you're not seeing results, you know you're intentionally building momentum and getting more traction. Okay, and that's an interesting thing you gotta do, is you have to map out and say, okay, this is more than likely going to take me 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. And once I actually accept the lag period, well, that means for 12 months, 18 months, you can go through a lot of pain. You can go through and endure a lot of sacrifice, knowing that the outcome is coming. This is Newton's laws of motion. This is simple physics. All right? Does that make sense? And being able to accept the lag period, this is what separates the men from the boys. And just because you're not seeing results right now does not mean that you're doing the wrong thing. I think it's just really important. I wanted to share this today. I think it's really important for you to understand that every input has an output. Right? I recommend probably taking notes on this, right? It's super important when you're building your game plan. And it's really important. I want to make sure I say this correct. It's really important that you don't let your hard work, your time, energy, resources that you've invested go to waste, right? Because we risk too much. I believe we work too hard. We risk too much. We put too much on the line to let something that's just physics really deter us and from getting what we want. Our sacrifices today, oh, I can't fucking say that word. Our sacrifices today, they pay big dividends tomorrow. And I wouldn't like to see something like this get in the way of you reaping what you're owed, right? So think whenever you're faced with this feeling of, should I quit? This uncertainty, think of the rocket ship, right? The rocket taking off, burning all that fuel, that is your come up right now. But eventually that friction subsides and eventually you break through the fucking atmosphere to the point where you don't fucking feel it, where you don't need to grind as hard, where your momentum will actually carry you forward, okay? Where it requires less effort. It's coasting. And the momentum becomes unstoppable, okay? And you go to fucking places that you can't even imagine. That's what can happen. So, what I want you to do is I want you to commit. I want you to commit every time now, from here on out, when you get faced with this, when you start questioning yourself, when you see other people, when you get shiny object syndrome, what I want you to do is I want you to say, no, this is just a lag period. I'm doing the right thing. I just have to hold the fucking line, okay? And if you commit, if you make a decision to doing that and you trust, I don't want to be cliche, but you trust the fucking process, I'm telling you, you will break through. Okay? So listen, we have to wrap this up. I wanted to keep it under 30 minutes. It's a sick fucking podcast. I appreciate you being here. So much big shit coming in the next few days. I'll keep you guys posted. But until then, I appreciate the fuck out of you. By the way, I appreciate all of you leaving 5 stars on the Spotify. I appreciate the fuck out of you. And if you haven't done it already, I would appreciate you if you did, because that means the world to me. Every time someone leaves a rating, it's a way of reciprocating that, but also letting me know that this is worth it. That realistically. But I'm going to do this regardless. Execute regardless. That's the difference between winning and losing. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Keep it 100% today and put a smile on somebody else's face. Be a force for good, right? Don't be a force for fucking evil. Put a smile on someone's face today. Pass it on. Appreciate you. Let's fucking go.